to my presentation. I am sick as a dog. Like, I have the tissues and all of that. So I apologize if I go into a coughing fit or a sneezing fit, but I'm super excited to be here and talk about our program in Ottawa County that we have to help us maintain our over 7,000 acres of natural land. So I know some of you, hopefully, are from some municipalities and from organizations that have property, and you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to actually maintain all these things they're talking about? But some of you are private landowners, and you maintain your own, and now you're like, I know what I'm doing, I'm awesome. How can I use these skills that I have learned today and in previous sessions and really help maintain my community? Because, right, we're all like one little piece of the puzzle, and we all need to work together because it's really the bigger picture that's going to make us successful. Okay, so I work for Ottawa County Parks, obviously, and I'm the Natural Resources Manager, which means that you'd actually think I would be managing natural resources, which I do, but the only reason why we were able to get my position is because half of my job is the volunteer manager. So what I'm going to talk about today is how we actually manage our natural resources, not with staff. We do have a very small staff, but mostly with people from the community. So this picture right here is Herman Miller that helped us put in rain garden / Monarch Way Station at one of our parks. And then they've adopted this park, and so they're going to come back every year and see the fruit of their labor. See if I know what I'm doing. All right. So this actually started well before my position, and at this point, all of our staff did parking lots and pit toilets, right? That was what maintenance was. And occasionally they dabbled in a little bit of garlic mustard pulling, but that's really minimal when you're talking about natural land management. So before I started, United Way said, you know what, we have these companies that really want to get out in their community and do something. And we're all kind of sick of litter pickups. I mean, not that litter pickups aren't important, but they recognize that that really wasn't giving that sustainable, long-lasting engagement into the parks. And so they formed what was called the Adopt a Park program. Now, I don't know much about the United Way in Muskegon, I have to admit, but most of them have their goals. And I don't know any of them that environment is their goal. But our United Way said, you know what, there's study after study showing that getting out into the environment is good for your health. So they approached their companies and said, listen, you want to form partnerships with the community. Why don't you look at going out to parks and doing stewardship work days and then get health credits for it? And sure enough, their health programs, like this is Hillshire brand, they actually got health points to go out that went towards their insurance for doing an hour-long garlic mustard pull. So some companies do this for team building, but more and more they're actually doing it as a way of getting them out and breathing fresh air, getting some exercise, and doing it as part of their health. Hillshire has actually been one of our longest standing adopt-a-parks, and they are just the hardest workers. They usually bring about 50 people, 25 for an hour and then 25 for an hour, and they just work their tails off for that entire time. And then GHSP did the same thing. And I will say the funny thing, lessons learned, right, is that as soon as they took it out as a healthcare benefit, it went from like 50 people down to like 5. So that really does have a benefit if you can tie it to something else for the employee. But the 5 that we have, well, I guess there's 6 there, they are super dedicated, and it varies. Like each year, we go, this was a rainy day, they're so dedicated, they didn't care. But this year we had about 15 people from GHSB. So they've been doing this now for over 10 years, so well before I started the Parks Department. And the great thing about this, and those of you who've been a volunteer before or you work with volunteers, you can go out and it's a really crappy day and you get no one, or you get one person. So the nice thing about these adopt-a-parks is they sign an agreement with us to come out 3 times a year. And they do 3 different things for those 3 years, or for those 3 times a year. And the agreements go for 3 years, and then they have to re-sign. We both have the option to back out if we want to. If they go that first day and they're like, it rained, it was miserable, I got a cold, I got poison ivy, why the hell would I want to do that again? So they have the ability to say, okay, we're not doing that. But then the other option is that if we have somebody that we think, oh, they're just not that great, or they're not returning our emails, we can back that out. But there are a lot of benefits that they get besides that health benefit. They get a free rental at our facilities, they get recognition, they get a sign at our park saying that this is stewarded by that company. And a lot of companies like GHSP, this is part of their mission, right? This is actually on their webpage as something that they value, is the environment. This is an actual way for them to demonstrate that. Because again, it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it. This was a garlic mustard pull, by the way. And then I started. And so we still have a lot of these adopt parks, and I'll go back into those in a second. But one of the things that we realized is we have a lot of retirees in West Michigan, right? It's a growing number, very popular place for people to retire. And we have a lot of students who need to get experience before they go into becoming a biologist. And so I was fortunate enough that they put me out in Chicago area where they have a Park Stewards program. I don't know, has anyone ever heard of Chicago's Park Stewards program? Okay, no one. Okay, good, but it's amazing. Like their natural land management, 100% started like from people like you. Their employees didn't care. Again, they were parking lots, they don't have pit toilets, but parking lots and toilets. And they said, we need to, these people were watching prairies getting taken over and turned into oak forest, and these wetlands being degraded, and they said, we need to do something. So these individuals from universities and other people that were just private citizens started to care for the natural lands. And they lead work days. So I learned that from Chicago, loved it, failed miserably at implementing it here in West Michigan. Did not work. That's a grassroots thing. That's something that they needed to start. I can't force that kind of park stewards thing. So we had to switch that model. And about 5 years ago now, we started the Park Stewards, and they meet twice a week. That is really important. If you do something like this, the consistency, a lot of retirees, this is what I found, is they want consistency because they're lacking that from not having a job anymore, right? So this is their job, but they also want flexibility. They don't want to be like, I have to go. They need to know that, hey, if I'm going to go to Florida, I don't have to be there. So consistency yet flexible is really important. So these volunteers come every Friday. Basically, we do a couple in the winter, but mostly from spring through fall. And they do all kinds of activities. That's another thing that we found is really important, is making sure that you diversify what they're doing. They cannot pull garlic mustard every day. They can, though, propane torch garlic mustard. That is super fun. It is a way to mix it up. So it's really important to kind of find really fun, engaging ways. And what we have found is they are a tight group now. In fact, we always have a Christmas party every year at someone's house, and it's just a wonderful fellowship. So you can see the great thing about it, it's diverse ages. This is, by the way, we were collecting floodplain species like sycamore and Kentucky coffee tree that we could then plant in restoration areas. So sometimes you can't find these things even for sale. So you can use the volunteers to go out and collect them. We've also had them, very interesting thing, we have a waiver that basically states, hey, we're gonna make sure that we do everything we can to do this safely, but if you screwed up and you get hurt, well, that's on you. So we have this waiver that everybody has to sign, and then if they are wanting to use power tools like a chainsaw, they have to go through our staff training. And so they're virtually unpaid staff. And at first this was kind of hard for me to explain to my superiors, but I had read a lot of books about volunteers. And you think about things like Red Cross. A lot of Red Cross are literally, they're managed by volunteers, and they are, CEOs of companies that are, so volunteers are not just like anyone, right? A lot of times you get some highly skilled people. And when I went to my boss and I said, okay, would you rather put a 50-year-old retiree with a chainsaw or an 18-year-old college student? And he was like, oh, I see, And so all of a sudden it sunk in that volunteers are not just volunteers. It's really important is understanding their skill level and their abilities. And so we do, and I will say, many of our volunteers are much better at a chainsaw than my staff. So this is this year when we had a dying pine plantation, and again, volunteers aren't to do everything. They have a niche. And so our staff dropped the trees, and then the volunteers came in and cut those trees up and then moved them. So it doesn't eliminate our staff needs, but it really supplements it so we can cut our staff time down to a quarter in a lot of our projects, which is a huge cost savings. And it oftentimes makes things possible. This is one that we started just because I'm obsessed with herps, reptiles and amphibians. I'm like crazy about them. And so we went out, and again, part of this is quality of life for them, continued life learning. And it's not just for our older volunteers, our retirees, but it's also for a lot of our college students. They want hands-on experience. So this is where we were going out and we were monitoring a vernal pond, one of our ephemeral ponds. The best part of this is, a lot of these people, I was shocked, it was their first time seeing a salamander. I was like, you're like 80. Like, how could that be your first time seeing a salamander? So that was pretty shocking for me, but it was so exciting for them. They were like little kids again. And what we have found now is that MNFI, Michigan Natural Features Inventory, has actually come and done an ephemeral wetland training for us, for our volunteers. And they now go out, and we have several ephemeral wetlands that they monitor for us. Every year they go out and they follow the protocol and then send it back to Michigan Natural Features Inventory. So they're great at doing monitoring as well as just the hard labor stuff.